Good to chat with John McClain. How you been, John?
Rich, I've been great. How are you?
And tell me how well is everything in Houston this morning?
A dark and dreary day, as you can imagine. Losing to the Red Sox, the best team in baseball, is one thing, but to lose 4 in a row after you get the first one at Fenway, including 3 at Minute Maid Park, is almost unfathomable. But the Red Sox kicked their butt, and they deserve to win and move on to the World Series.
So what's the postmortem? What do you think the epitaph reads for the 2018 Houston Astros, John?
They won a record number of games, 103. They peaked at the right time, starting in September. They swept the Indians, and then they were a huge disappointment. But overall, the fans here are very forgiving. They're all fired up now about spring training beginning February 23rd, and all is forgiven one day later.
Well, I mean, they definitely have the kids. They definitely have the young players that are going to turn into veterans of significant note. What do you think they do in this offseason? What happens here?
In the last offseason, Rich, Jeff Luhnow, the GM, rebuilt the bullpen. The bullpen let them down big time in this series. They've got unsigned players, Dallas Keuchel. They got to get Marwin Gonzalez back. He's just too valuable at a number of positions. Most people think Keuchel, as a lefty who's 30, will get a big contract somewhere else. They've got Evan Gattis' contract up. Charlie Morton, he'll be 35 next season. But those are the only guys that really contributed who could be gone. And their minor league system is really good. And as you mentioned, they got a lot of good young players here. They should be good again next season and one of the favorites to win the World Series.
Well, I talked about it with Ken Rosenthal earlier, John. The reputation of the organization has definitely taken a hit with the story that was in Yahoo Sports this week about somebody I've never heard of getting a credential seemingly from the owner to take photographs of opposing dugouts, and this is in light of a lot of teams thinking that the Astros are cheaters. Are they cheaters, John?
I have no idea. I mean, baseball investigated and said the guy was there for surveillance, which is ridiculous. I mean, he was supposed to be making sure the Red Sox were not cheating, with their Apple Watches again. I would imagine just about every team in this era of analytics and electronics that everybody's doing something to try to gain an advantage. But when you put a guy in a camera well and he's not a camera and he's right next to the dugout shooting, then it's very suspicious, and the Indians tipped them off on that. But I was stunned baseball investigated so quick, and I'm guessing this is not the end of it.
John McClain here on the Rich Eisen Show. How hurt is Deshaun Watson, John?
He was not on the injury report this week. He went through full participation in every practice. Last week he played with a bruised sternum, a broken rib, and a partially collapsed lung. And the offense had its worst game. He had his worst game. He only got sacked 7 times and knocked down 12 more times. And yet he said this week he feels so much better than he did last week.
It just seems to me, even though his numbers, I guess statistically, fantasy-wise, are up, the offense just doesn't seem to have clicked so far, John. Is that a fair assessment?
Rich, that offense in the red zone is pathetic. Last year when he played in his 6 starts, they were number 1 in red zone touchdowns, 67%. Now they're 31st. Only ahead of the Jets. The only team's been in the red zone more than the Texans is the Rams, but they can't score touchdowns. And the closer they get, the worse they are, and they show no signs of improvement.
So what is the answer?
I don't know. They get the same quarterback. You got the same play caller in Bill O'Brien. You got another bad offensive line. They can't get a push. It's almost like you get to the 1, you get a penalty, 2 penalties on purpose to back up to get some room. And if I'm the Jaguars Sunday and they get in the red zone, I say, come on down to the 1 because they can't score from the 1.
Well, I'm assuming the Cowboys took care of any plays that Bill O'Brien still has on his sheet that includes number 4 trying to run it in from the 1, right? I mean, wouldn't you think that's done?
Those were he couldn't find a receiver, and he took off, and that's where he got hurt. Mm-hmm. This last game, he only ran twice. He said, well, we had a more conservative game plan with my running. But Watson has to be smarter with the ball. He's got to get rid of it quicker. They worked on that all week in practice. We'll see against Jacksonville. The Jaguars sacked them 14 times in 2 games last year. Calais Campbell had 6. I would imagine he's a beast that wants to feast.
Yeah, I imagine so. And it seems like J.J. Watt's all the way back, John. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh, yeah, Rich. He's been great. He looks like he did in 2015 when he won his last Defensive Player of the Year award. Sacks, tackles for loss, quarterback hits, forced fumbles. He's been great in every area. We saw in every area, and we saw it in the second half of the opener against New England when he started to look like his old self, and now he's back to getting the double teams by the tackles and the guards, and they need other players to take up the slack. But he's been tremendous, fun to watch again. He's probably not one of the few defensive players I've ever watched and not watched the ball, but watch him because he's just been so extraordinary through the years. And after knowing what he went through the last 2 years, I'm really happy for him.
Well, John McClain, Houston Chronicle here on the Rich Eisen Show. Having seen what we did see this past Sunday night between Mahomes, Chiefs, Brady, Patriots, what we might see from the Ravens against New Orleans this week, what is the viable ceiling for the Houston Texans in 2018?
The AFC South, which I thought was going to be a lot better, is mediocre again. I think the quarterback, and none of the quarterbacks are playing well except Andrew Luck, but he's got nothing around him. But of the other three quarterbacks, I think the one that turns it around is going to be the one that wins the division. That could be Bortles. He had one of the best games of his career against the Texans last year in Jacksonville when Jadeveon Clowney called him trash, and so now he's back home. I expect Bortles to play well against the Texans.
Mm-hmm. And you saw the Cowboys a couple weeks ago right there in your home state of Texas. What do you think their viability is moving forward in 2018?
I was stunned, Rich, when I saw the Texans shut down the Cowboys' offense, just totally shut down Ezekiel Elliott. And then Dallas puts up 40 on Jacksonville, which has just made the Jaguars even more ornery going into this game Sunday. But anybody looks like right now, other than the Giants, can win the NFC East. And I picked the Cowboys this year like I picked the Eagles last year, and right now still think they got a chance.
And now let's move on to the Rockets, who are here in Los Angeles this weekend. They're going to be first up for LeBron in purple and gold right here in L.A. That was quite a beatdown they suffered an opening night against New Orleans. What is the expectation level for the Rockets?
That is a nice way to put it, beatdown, because it was actually a lot worse. They were playing at Toyota Center next door to Minute Maid Park, and they're glad that the Astros were playing because they just got obliterated. So it might be good that they're out there. Expectations here, of course, are very high. They added Carmelo Anthony to go with James Harden and Chris Paul, and they added some other pieces, but they got off to a bad start. But people here still think it's going to be the Rockets and the Warriors in the Western Finals again.
So what do you think they are going to do, though, John?
I think with all that talent, with the new pieces they brought in, they needed – I don't know, Rich. I was stunned they got beat that bad, but they got too many good players. D'Antoni's a good coach. They shoot those threes like crazy. I think they'll be right there behind the Warriors.
Well, I mean, when it all comes down to it, they lost Jeff Bzdelik, who is the supposed defensive guru for this team, and that switching defense that we saw work so well against Golden State until Chris Paul's hamstring gave away. Is that any genuine concern for you?
It's too early to say that. They've made remarkable improvement on defense. He even got James Harden to play defense the last 2 years, which people didn't know that Harden could. And I think having Chris Paul there, he's been a tremendous leader. And they brought in a couple of players who are defensive specialists, but you never know when you lose somebody what the impact is going to be on the team. But I think they've still got so much talent, there's no way they're not going to be right there at the end.
All right. Now, is there any on your Hall of Fame radar, John? What's your best guess now that we're midway through the season coming up? Obviously, we're going to be having a new class coming in. Gil Brandt is in this mix for the first time. It's pretty exciting on that front. How do you see that coming down?
I'm so happy for Gil and Pat Bowlen, of course. Gil, I've known forever, like you have. I grew up in Waco, Texas, diehard Cowboy fan. I started hearing about him in 1960 with Tex Schramm and Tom Landry, and knowing how much Gil's meant to the game, he's in. Pat Bowlen's in. So having two contributors this year, I think, is just tremendous.
So what do you think when it all comes down to it with players who might get in this?
I think we got locks like Champ Bailey, Tony Gonzalez, and there's one more, and I can't remember who it is. I see three locks on there, and the rest.
I think Ed Reed is one of them,
Ed
right?
Reed is another lock, and so that makes it tough for the guys who are holdovers, but I know this, Rich, it gets harder and harder every year because of all the talent that's not just coming out that's first-time eligible, but the guys that are worthy year in and year out. And unless we increase the ballot, which we're not going to do, I feel so bad for those who have to wait. But as so many have learned, never give up hope.
Why not increase the ballot?
You'd have to talk to the Hall of Fame bosses on that one. That's way above my pay grade.
Would you, as part of the selection committee, would the members of the selection committee like that? Would they?
I can only speak for myself, but knowing how many guys are worthy that are not in, not just the modern era, but the seniors, I'd love to increase it. Not as many as the College Basketball Hall of Fame, where they had there's so many you can't fit their names in a paragraph. So I would love to see us add more.
Because, I mean, when you think about it, John, and we are broadcasting right now straight into Canton, Ohio, on our affiliate WHBC out there. Look, there's just a handful over 300 men in the history of the National Football League, on which there's 53 that play every single week for 32 teams. I don't think it would dilute the sport and or that room if you add one or two more every single year.
I agree with you 100%. One thing I'd like to see, and this came up when we created the contributor category, there was a talk about putting coaches in the contributing category because it's hard for coaches to get in when they're going against players. And so I wish they were eligible for contributors, and then we'd be able to get more coaches in there.
Now, I just don't know if you're aware of this, John, before I let you go. Since you're a man right there in the Gulf South, I asked Wade Phillips when I saw him for the Thursday night football game a few weeks ago. It was Rams throwback. I asked him, I'm like, can't you wear a Bum Phillips lid? I mean, can't we get a 10-gallon hat made by Nike or something like that? And he said he would reach out to do something like that. Don't you think he should do something like that?
I think he definitely should do that. He's probably got a lot of his dad's cowboy hats and those big jackets Bum used to wear when it was cold. And he's got the boots. So, yeah, I'd love to see
just put this
Wade Phillips do that. Son of Bum.
Yes, son of What's your favorite Bum Phillips story before I let you go? You must have one.
He had a lot of great quotes. One time when Earl Campbell couldn't finish the mile run in the off-season conditioning program, media ran up to him and, oh, my goodness, Bum, Earl can't finish the mile. And he goes, well, when it's third in the mile, I'll give it to somebody else.
You hearing Earl Campbell references in terms of Saquon Barkley, John? I'm hearing a lot of those, actually.
I hear a lot of references to Earl when you have a guy who's got speed and power and has a lot of long runs. Barkley, of course, is an incredible prospect, and I think we'll hear more. So
you think it's fair?
I think at this early date, no. I mean, Earl's rookie year, he was MVP. I don't think Barkley's going to be MVP or lead the league in rushing. Earl did both of those in 1978. And so he's going to have to earn that comparison.
Last thing for you, John. What are you watching these days? Waiting for Game of Thrones next year? Waiting for your favorite Khaleesi to come back on television?
I can't wait till they put all the previous episodes on HBO to remind us what the show's about, so we can see it again. I still miss Ramsey Bolton big time, and I'm going to be depressed when that show is off TV because anytime they put rerun out there, I watch it. And after it's all over, Rich, I'm going to go back and read the books.
Okay, but what are you watching now? What
I watch on TV today, I like two friends of mine created the Chicago series on NBC, Chicago Med, Chicago Fire, and Chicago PD, and I never miss them because of Derek Haas and Michael Brandt.
Okay.
Those are the ones I watch the most.
Are you going Hollywood on me,
They all
John?
went to Baylor. Sick 'em.
Okay, I was about to say, are you going Hollywood on me, John? Are you going
No,
Hollywood?
I'm not going. In fact, Michael offered me a chance to come do a role in the last episode of Chicago Fire 2 years. He said, you can play a corpse. And I said, will people be able to recognize me? He said, yeah, we'll just have them burn you below the face. And then I couldn't get away because of the draft.
Come on, John.
Could have been a corpse on Chicago Fire.
Okay, John. There's always tomorrow. There's always
Thanks
tomorrow.
a lot, Rich.
Take care, John. You take care. That's John McClain.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.